The metal arm snapped forward faster than a blink. Ethan Cole moved without thinking. His hand shot out, caught the strike, and twisted. The machine screeched as its inner servos burned. Sparks hit the floor. The test room filled with the smell of melted steel. Everyone went silent. Rows of alien cadets stood frozen, their dark eyes locked on the human who had just broken a device that measured speed beyond biological limits. The machine was built to track lightning reflexes. It now lay broken on the floor, wires smoking. A blue-skinned instructor stared at the screen. The readings were blank. He looked up, voice calm but shaking. Impossible. Ethan straightened his back and breathed slowly. The metallic glove around his wrist hissed from the heat. He gave a small smile. Fast enough, he said. The room stayed quiet. No one laughed. A tall insectoid cadet whispered something in his own language and stepped back. The others followed, leaving a small circle of space around Ethan. The instructor turned toward a side window where senior officers stood behind tinted glass. Their faces were hidden, but the tension in the room changed. A voice came through the wall speaker, cold, mechanical. Contain the human subject. 2 security drones rose from the floor panels. Their weapons rotated into place. Ethan's body moved before his mind caught up. He dropped low as the first pulse blast burned the air where his head had been. He rolled, grabbed a fallen metal bar, and slammed it into the nearest drone. Circuits cracked. The second fired again, cutting through a row of test monitors. Ethan threw the bar. It hit the drone dead center, and the machine fell in a shower of sparks. The echo of the crash faded, leaving only the hum of power lines. Ethan looked around. The cadets stared in fear now. Some of them reached for their comms, but none spoke. The instructor stepped back, hands raised slightly. Cadet Cole, stand down. You are in violation of... Violation of what? Ethan cut in, his voice rough. Passing your test? He was breathing hard. The air felt thick. He could feel the energy from the broken machines around him. The red light from the alarms painted the walls. A low siren started to grow louder in the distance. Through the observation window, he saw movement. Officers were speaking fast, their lips tight, their eyes sharp. One of them pressed a control pad. The ceiling vents opened and a thin mist filled the room. Ethan coughed as the gas touched his throat. He staggered back, eyes burning. The insectoid cadet from earlier reached out a clawed hand. They will not stop, he said in a low tone. You broke their perfect machine. Ethan's vision blurred. He pushed through the smoke toward the exit. His legs felt heavy. The door slid open, but 3 armored guards waited outside. They raised their rifles. The barrels glowed white. Ethan tried to speak, but his lungs felt tight. His body dropped to one knee. A pulse hit the floor beside him, then another. He could see their reflections in the glass, emotionless and steady. The instructor shouted, "Do not kill him. The council wants him alive." One of the guards hesitated. That pause was all Ethan needed. His hand shot up, grabbed the nearest rifle, and turned it aside. The blast hit the wall. The other guard moved in, but Ethan hit him across the visor and ripped the weapon from his grip. He fired once. The lights blew out. Darkness filled the room. He could hear footsteps running toward him from every side. His heart pounded. Somewhere behind the smoke, a calm voice spoke again through the intercom. "The human has breached control. Lock down the facility." Ethan pressed his back against the wall and looked at the shattered machine still smoking on the floor. He had come here to prove humans could stand with the galaxy's best. Now they wanted to cage him. He clenched his jaw and whispered to himself, "Let them try." Ethan ran through the metal corridor, gas alarms echoing behind him. The floor shook with heavy steps from the guards. Red lights flashed across his face as the lockdown gates started to close one by one. He pushed harder, sliding under a half-shut door before it sealed. He landed on cold metal and kept running. The sound of his boots hit the floor in sharp rhythm. He didn't know where he was going. He just needed space to think, to breathe. Through the wide windows of the corridor, he saw the stars outside. The Academy was a floating fortress above a dying moon. Beyond it, a fleet of alien warships waited in orbit like silent predators. He turned a corner and stopped. A security drone hovered ahead, scanning the hall. He ducked behind a crate, his breath steady. The drone beeped, rotated, then fired a stun pulse down the hall. The air burned as it passed. Ethan moved before it could charge again. He leaped forward, grabbed the drone's body, and slammed it into the wall until it sparked and fell. The hum of the machine faded. The only sound left was his breathing. He ripped a metal panel from the wall and found a maintenance shaft. Crawling inside, he followed the dim light until he dropped into another room. It was dark and cold. The air smelled of oil and dust. Rows of inactive drones lined the walls. In the center stood a large screen with alien script flashing red. A voice came from behind him, calm and sharp. "You are not supposed to be here, human." Ethan spun, rifle ready. The voice belonged to a reptilian cadet, tall and armored in dark green plates. It was Terran Vex, one of the few who hadn't mocked him during training. Ethan kept the rifle low but ready. "You going to turn me in?" Terran stepped closer, eyes narrow. "You broke the testing system. They say you broke their trust. You are dangerous." "Guess that makes two of us," Ethan said, "because they're trying to kill me." Terran watched him for a long moment. The sound of distant alarms filled the silence. Then he nodded once. "You move like no one I have seen. Not machine, not logic. Pure reaction. That scares them." Ethan lowered the rifle slightly. "They said they wanted to train me. I thought that meant something." Terran moved to the console and pressed a few keys. A file appeared on the screen. It showed the test results and a list of notes written by the instructors. One line stood out in bright text: "Human subject displays unpredictable behavior. Potential weapon class." Ethan stared at it. "Weapon." He said the word slowly. "That's all they see." Terran didn't reply. The door to the room shook as guards approached. Their voices grew louder in the hall. Ethan looked around. There was no exit except a narrow tunnel on the far side. "Where does that go?" he asked. Terran's tail flicked once. "To the data vault. If you want to know the truth about this place, you go there. But if you go, you won't come back." Ethan's hand tightened on the rifle. "Then that's where I'm going." The door lock started to break. Sparks fell from the hinges. Terran turned toward him. "I will cover you. Go." Ethan hesitated. "Why help me?" Terran looked at him with steady eyes. "Because they fear you, and I want to see why." Ethan nodded once and ran into the tunnel. The sound of pulse fire filled the room behind him. He kept moving through the narrow path, the walls trembling from explosions. The tunnel opened into a new chamber filled with glass screens and silver control pods. Words in alien code scrolled across the walls. He stepped closer, trying to read. One screen showed a map of space. Another showed a file marked Classified Human Origin. His pulse quickened. He reached for the console. The moment his hand touched it, the system spoke in an old human voice. "Access granted. Welcome, Captain Ethan Cole." His heart froze. He had never been called captain in his life. Behind him, he heard heavy steps coming closer. Ethan froze at the sound of the voice. It was human, old but clear. He looked around the dark chamber, heart pounding. The screens flickered, showing lines of human text mixed with alien code. It was like two languages fighting for control of the same system. He leaned close to the console. "Who are you?" he said quietly. The voice answered, calm and slow. "I am the archive intelligence of the First Human Fleet. You have activated a restricted system. Confirm your command code." Ethan stared at the glowing screen. He didn't know any code, but the console already responded, unlocking more files. Rows of data appeared. Human ships, crew rosters, coordinates of destroyed fleets. His hands shook as he scrolled through the images. He saw faces, men and women in old military uniforms, a symbol he recognized from history lessons, Earth Command. The next image showed a battle, dozens of human ships surrounded by alien warcraft. Fire cut across the dark. Then one line of text appeared. Human contact terminated by council order. Ethan stepped back. He felt his stomach tighten. His people hadn't failed to reach the stars. They had been destroyed. He whispered to himself, "They wiped us out." The voice continued, ignoring his shock. "Warning, Council security forces detected. They are entering the lower corridors." Ethan forced his mind to focus. He grabbed a data core from the panel and disconnected it. The lights dimmed and a door opened behind him. Terran Vex stumbled in, bleeding from a wound across his shoulder. "You are still alive," Terran said, his voice rough. "For now," Ethan replied. He looked at the blood on Terran's arm. "You didn't have to come." Terran looked at the console. "What did you find?" Ethan held up the core. "Proof. The Council killed us before we ever joined them. They said humans were dangerous. They were right." The walls shook with an explosion. Metal dust rained from the ceiling. Alarms screamed louder. Terran pointed toward the side exit. "We must leave. The hunter drones will find us soon." They ran through the passage, the sound of engines rising beneath their feet. The facility was coming alive again. Red lights chased them down the corridor. The walls seemed to close in. Ethan could feel the air pressure changing. The academy was sealing itself off section by section. When they reached the hangar door, the view hit him hard. Through the wide glass he saw a storm of ships moving outside. Warships. The Council fleet was forming up. Terran stopped beside him. They called reinforcements. Ethan pressed his hand against the glass. "No, they're preparing to erase this place. They don't want the truth getting out." Behind them, the sound of metal claws scraping grew louder. A group of drones turned the corner, weapons spinning. Ethan and Terran dove behind a crate as pulse fire filled the hall. Blue light hit the walls in short bursts. Ethan peeked out, aimed his rifle, and fired. One drone dropped, another rushed forward. Terran tackled it, crushing its head under his claws. Sparks sprayed across the floor. They fought their way through until the last drone fell smoking. Ethan's chest burned. His muscles shook. He looked around the hangar for a way out. Terran pointed to a small patrol ship near the loading ramp. "That one still has power." They ran for it. Gunfire echoed again. Guards entered from the far door, shouting commands. Ethan hit the controls and the ramp closed just as the first shots hit the hull. The engines roared, the ship lifted off the deck and burst through the hangar shield. Alarms from the station followed them into open space. Terran looked at Ethan. "You just started a war." Ethan stared at the burning lights behind them. "No," he said. "They started it. I'm just finishing it." He opened the data core and set the transmission to broadcast. A cold voice came from the ship's system. "Warning. Pursuit detected." Ethan looked out the window and saw a dark shape forming in the distance. A single hunter ship was already tracking them. Its voice cut through the radio, calm and metallic. "Surrender, human. You are not fast enough to escape me." The patrol ship shook as energy bolts tore past its hull. Ethan gripped the flight controls tight, trying to steady the craft. Terran sat beside him, checking the weapon systems. The warning lights blinked across the dashboard. "That hunter ship is gaining," Terran said. His voice stayed calm, but his claws dug into the console. Ethan's eyes locked on the scanner. The enemy ship was faster, heavier, built for killing. He could see it closing in on the radar, a single red mark that refused to fall behind. "Hold on," Ethan said, and pushed the throttle to maximum. The patrol ship lurched forward, its engines screaming. The stars blurred. The ship shuddered, panels rattling loose. Ethan turned hard, diving toward a broken moon below. The hunter fired again. A bolt clipped the tail, sending sparks across the cabin. Terran shouted, "You cannot outrun it." "Not trying to," Ethan said. He pulled the ship down into the moon's thin atmosphere. The surface rushed up fast, covered in ash and metal ruins. The hunter ship followed close behind. The patrol ship cut low over the ground, weaving between collapsed towers and rusted war wrecks. Dust and fire trails followed in their wake. Ethan's eyes moved fast, tracking every obstacle. His body felt tense but alive. Every movement was instinct. The hunter ship fired again. The blast hit a nearby ridge, sending debris flying. Metal shards smashed against their hull. One piece tore through the side and hit Terran's shoulder. He hissed in pain but stayed at his station. Ethan saw the dark outline of a broken city ahead. Tall towers, hollow and silent. He aimed straight for them. The hunter stayed close, trying to predict his flight path. Inside the ruined city, Ethan cut power and dropped the ship between two shattered towers. The engines roared once, then went silent. The patrol craft slid into the shadows. The hunter flew past, scanning the empty streets. Ethan and Terran sat still, listening to the metal creak. The silence was thick. Dust floated through the air. Terran whispered, "You think it lost us?" Ethan shook his head. "No. It's thinking." A sudden crash broke the quiet. The hunter ship smashed through a building above them, its searchlights cutting through the dark. It had found them. Ethan slammed the power back on. The patrol ship lifted fast, but the hunter's guns opened fire. The first shot hit the rear engine. Alarms screamed. Smoke filled the cabin. Ethan fought the controls, the ship spinning as flames burst from the back. "We are hit," Terran yelled. Ethan gritted his teeth. "We're not done." He flipped the manual override and turned the ship toward the hunter. Terran looked at him in shock. "You are flying straight into it." "That's the point," Ethan said. He pushed forward, headlight glare cutting across the hunter's hull. The enemy opened fire, but Ethan twisted the patrol ship in ways it wasn't designed to move. The wings scraped metal towers. Every move was violent and fast. At the last second, he cut the engines, letting the ship drop under the enemy's guns. The hunter overshot. Ethan reignited the thrusters and came up behind it. "Now," he said. Terran fired the main cannon. The blast hit the hunter's rear core. The explosion lit the sky. The shockwave slammed into their ship, throwing it off course. Ethan fought to regain control, but the engines were dying. Smoke filled the cabin. The controls sparked. The ship spun downward toward the surface. They crashed through a dead forest of metal pillars, the hull tearing apart. The ship slammed to a stop, half buried in the dust. Ethan unbuckled and pulled Terran from the wreck. The air outside was thin and cold. Fire from the crash flickered behind them. Above, the sky burned with the light of the hunter's wreckage. Terran dropped to one knee, breathing hard. "You killed it." Ethan looked at the smoke rising in the distance. "No, that was just one. The council will send more." He turned toward the horizon. In the distance, he saw a faint glow deep under the gray sky. Towers, broken but still alive with energy. Something hidden waited there. He tightened his grip on his rifle. "We find shelter, then we see what this place really is." Terran stood beside him, his wound still bleeding. "And if the council comes here?" Ethan looked at the horizon again, his voice flat. "Then they'll wish they didn't." The wind carried the sound of engines far away. More ships were coming. Ethan stared up at the sky, his eyes cold and ready. Ethan and Terran walked across the gray wasteland. Wind blew hard, pushing dust across the ground. The crash site burned behind them, a trail of black smoke against the red sky. The ruins ahead glowed faintly with power. It looked old, but alive. Terran limped, holding his wound. Ethan helped him when he stumbled. Neither spoke much. The silence felt heavy. Above them, flashes of light marked ships moving through the clouds. The council fleet was coming. They reached the edge of the ruins. Massive doors stood half buried in the sand. Strange symbols covered the surface. Ethan touched the metal and felt it vibrate under his hand. A voice came from deep inside. It was the same human voice from the archive. "Captain Cole, access confirmed." The doors slid open. The sound echoed through the empty land. Inside was a large chamber filled with machines, screens, and cold blue light. It was human design, but older. Dust covered everything. Ethan stepped forward, his footsteps echoing. He looked at the wall and saw the same emblem he had seen in the archive. Earth Command. It wasn't a ruin. It was an outpost. Terran's eyes widened. "Your people built this?" Ethan nodded slowly. "They tried to hide what the Council did, but not everything died." He found a main terminal and wiped the dust off. It flickered to life. A map of the system appeared. Red markers showed the Council ships closing in. Another window opened on its own. The voice spoke again. "Welcome back, Captain. Defense systems offline for 71 years. Reactivate." Ethan hesitated for a second, then said, "Yes, reactivate." The ground started to rumble. Outside, the ruins began to move. Metal plates shifted. Old cannons rose from beneath the sand. Towers lit with blue energy. Terran stared in disbelief. "This place is a fortress." Ethan watched the screens as the systems came alive. One by one, old human defense satellites powered up in orbit. The fleet outside must have seen it too, because new signals appeared. The Council ships were changing formation. They were preparing to attack. Terran turned toward him. "They will destroy everything. We must run." Ethan shook his head. "No more running." He sent a signal through the console, broadcasting across open channels. His voice echoed over every screen in range. "To the Galactic Council, you wanted to test a human reflex? Here's ours." He pressed the command key. The fortress fired. Beams of light shot into the sky, tearing through the first wave of Council ships. Explosions flashed above the clouds. The sound reached them seconds later, deep and heavy. The earth shook. Terran gripped the console as dust rained from the ceiling. "They will keep coming." Ethan's eyes stayed on the screen. Let them. The galaxy forgot what humans are. Time to remind them. The fleet outside reorganized. Hundreds of ships filled the sky now, moving into attack lines. Missiles streaked down. The old fortress shields flared, holding for now. Ethan moved fast, redirecting power from the lower sections. His fingers flew across the controls. Terran looked at him confused. "How can you think so fast?" Ethan didn't answer. His eyes followed the movement of every ship on the screen. His mind worked faster than the targeting systems. Every decision came like instinct. He turned to Terran. "This is what they feared. Humans don't calculate. We act." A massive explosion rocked the structure. The power grid flickered. One of the walls cracked. Smoke poured from a vent. Ethan coughed and kept working. He rerouted systems, bringing new guns online. Then a new voice broke through the comms, cold and sharp. "This is Commander Valken of the Council Fleet. Human, your resistance ends now." Ethan looked up at the sky on the screen. The largest ship appeared through the clouds, black and wide as a city. Its weapons glowed. Valken's ship. Terran's voice was low. "That one is not like the others." Ethan stared at the image and said, "Good. I was hoping for a challenge." He reached for the control lever. The screen showed the fortress charging everything it had. Energy built in the main core. The sky turned white. Outside, the Council fleet opened fire. Inside, Ethan smiled once. Then everything went bright.